Good morning. Hello. It is Sunday morning. It is April 20th, 2025. It's Easter. It's 420. It's all kinds of good things. I read a lot last week. Last week was a fantastic week. I watched 2 movies and I read 6 books, which feels great. Unfortunately, I also received a lot less. I received a lot last week also. And I'm trying to figure out like what the hell am I gonna do for that, because like clearly the book wall won the first one. I'm currently on the very last book for my first TBR takedown episode, and it's a reread of Summer Sons and I'm loving it. But so I got like my TBR for the next one sitting right over here. It's big. It's literally 80 books. So I gotta figure out how to like actually make this work. I don't know. But either way, let's get into it. First up, this is a weekly wrap of everything I've watched, everything I've received, everything I've read, everything I'm getting rid of, everything. So first up, the first thing I did last week was I did watch Waitress. And so this is a movie. It is currently, it does have a Broadway musical that was based on it, but it follows this woman who's in a very unhappy relationship, who really loves making pies, and she really dreams of getting enough money and saving up enough money so that she can go to this pie competition and win enough money so that she can leave her husband, who is from Wrong Turn. Her husband was the tall guy with the deep voice in Wrong Turn. And the minute I saw him, I was like, Scott from Wrong Turn. And so then my Letterboxd review references that. But then looking at the other Letterboxd reviews, I'm guessing that the pie chart, that not the pie chart, but that like the Venn diagram of people who watch both this and Wrong Turn is very, very small. Because nobody else was referencing that he was in Wrong Turn. I'm just like, send them to the mountains to get eaten by cannibals, and everybody's just like, I hate your husband. I'm like, then make the connection. Anyway, it's a good movie. It really is. I do. On one hand, I understand like why they made a Broadway musical of it, because it's such a good movie. But also, I'm like, domestic abuse and pie and adultery. I don't know. It was a good movie though. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. But there was that. Then I finished my first book. I finished a book with one of my sets of 5th graders. This is my middle group. They're my fun group. They're a little crazy. They're a little nuts. They're why I have fugglers in my classroom now. That's my class pets. But we finished up Sammy Keys and the Skeleton Man by Wendell Van Dranen. Sammy Keys is like the 90s Nancy Drew. I loved Sammy Keys growing up. She was so fun. And this one, she ends up on Halloween. She sees a guy dressed in a skeleton costume run out of this kind of creepy house that he has like set on fire, and she's figuring out like who stole stuff from the Bushman, and why, and also dealing with her own little things. I have one kid in that group. He loved this. He loved just how sassy she was and how much of a problem Sammy Keys was. The rest of the group can kind of take the book or leave it. But no, this is a childhood thing. I think I gave it 5 out of 5 stars just for nostalgia's sake. All right, next, I did reread a book, but I didn't realize it was a reread until I went to Goodreads and I saw that I'd already read this book, and I was like, what? I don't remember reading this book. And genuinely, it took me about halfway through it to remember reading this book, but apparently I read it in like 2022. And I read the first book in like 2015, so my grasp on this series is not large. That's World After by Susan E. This is the sequel to Angel Fall. They were these angel books that were really, really big back when they first came out. It's like apocalyptic angels. We follow Penryn, who has made a bond with one of these angels, basically with Raphael. And her little sister is like, in the first book, her little sister's taken, and that's her big thing. She wants to get her little sister back. In this book, she's got her sister and she's sort of safe, but then there's like a lot going on with like the human mutations and stuff like that. Looking at my old review of this back from 2022, I mentioned how bloody it is. It is very bloody for a young adult book, and it's real gross in a lot of ways, and there are a lot of very disturbing kind of ideas being explored here, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But no, I think my enjoyment of this series is kind of hindered by the fact that A, I haven't read book once in 10 years, and B, I genuinely read this entire book 3 years ago and remembered none of it. None of it. Not until the sword started talking to her was I like, oh right, yeah, maybe I have read this book. But still, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Like, it's still a really interesting series and still a really good series. I think that if I'd gotten into the series in high school, it would be kind of like, I'd look at it kind of like I look at like the Riders of the Apocalypse series by Jackie Morse Kessler, where I'm like, it's got some nostalgia built in there, so I can kind of enjoy it. But overall, I give it 4 to 5 stars. I think it's a decent one. Like I said, it's pretty dark, especially for YA. Then I read another pretty dark book, and this one was kind of a disappointment, honestly. That's Red Dragon by Thomas Harris, not Hannibal Lecter. So this is the first book in the Hannibal kind of series. It does take place before Silence of the Lambs. I haven't read Silence of the Lambs. I've seen Silence of the Lambs. And I have actually listened to an abridged audiobook version, which is basically just the movie. That's what it is. This follows Will Graham, and his quest to hunt for the Tooth Fairy. And I was relatively familiar with the story because I have watched the kill counts for both movies, Manhunt and Red Dragon, the one with, Anthony Hopkins. But, I never read the book. But I can't get behind Harris's writing style. It's so sparse. It's very sparse. It's a lot of dialogue, which isn't a bad thing. I like dialogue, but it's very sparse in, like, its descriptions and in everything that's going on. And I felt like I was just kind of drifting through the book, and I didn't really care all that much. It has a very much an 80s thriller kind of crime procedural feel to it. And I'm saying that in a bad way. I didn't like it very much. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. That's what it is. That's how it is. It wasn't very good, unfortunately. I'm wondering how I'm gonna, because I do have Silence of the Lambs in the book. Well, I'm wondering how I'm gonna feel about it. I like the idea of Will Graham's character, and I never watched Hannibal, but I don't know. Then I read a book. I loved it. Probably my favorite book. Definitely my favorite book of the week. I liked it more than the first book, which was a lot, because in the first couple of chapters I was like, I don't know about this, but then I read Go Luck Yourself by Sarah Rosh. This is the sequel to The Nightmare Before Christmas, but it's like one of those romance series where, like, they're all companion novels. But this follows Cole's little brother, Cole's little brother, Chris, who ends up falling in with the St. Patrick's Day prince. And first up, Chris had no business being that relatable in a lot of ways. And second up, I love the dynamic between Chris and Lachlan and Locke, Chris and Locke. They were just like, I love their dynamic. I love the fact that Chris was just realizing things like, maybe I do have panic attacks while actively having a panic attack. I thought that was hilarious. I don't know. I just loved it. I loved it. I thought it was really fun. Like I said, the dynamic between them was just it was perfect. It was perfect. It was beautiful. It's better than book 1. 5 out of 5 stars. I love Go Luck Yourself. And yes, I'm also upset that her next book is not like the Iris and Finn book. It's like taking a break into like some D&D stuff, which I'm not mad about. Like, I have it pre-ordered, but like, then I reread The Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan. This is the second Percy Jackson book. I do think it's the weakest of the original series. This is the second book, so we follow the events of the first book, but we have a new quest. We're looking for the Golden Fleece. We're looking for Grover. The camp has been poisoned. You don't really need me to explain Percy Jackson to you. I do understand why and how it has been so influential in children's literature. I just think that book 2 is absolutely the weakest of the original. Like, books 1 and 2 are really the worst ones. Like 3 through 5, perfect. 1 and 2, 4 out of 5. So 4 out of 5. All right, then I read a nonfiction book. And it's like a culture study, but it's also from like 2005, so it's a little bit dated. But I do think it had some interesting things to say. But it's called Female Chauvinist Pigs by Ariel Levy. This is Women in the Rise of Raunch Culture. This is about how women, in the early 2000s, women started participating pretty heavily in exploiting themselves and exploiting their own bodies. And I think this is an interesting thing to read right now, as our younger Gen Z folks are swinging more puritanical in a lot of ways. And it's like, I'm not saying that the women in the early 2000s were doing the right thing. I mean, obviously they were exploiting themselves in a lot of ways that a lot of them didn't really realize what they were doing, or didn't really care because they were still young and hot, and I think that there is a middle ground to be found there somewhere, where we don't shame people for having any kind of sexuality, but also where we're not feeling like we need to show our boobs to get in the boys club, like there's got to be a middle ground there somewhere, I don't think that our current puritanical lean to Gen Z is correct. I am technically Gen Z. I'm on the older end. I was born in 1997, so I'm in the first wave. I'm first wave. Before the generations got so like split up and commodified, I'm in one of those years where like some people would say I'm a millennial, some people would say I'm a Gen Z or like that kind of thing. But now I'm very, very definitively in Gen Z whenever you look it up. But I don't know. I think there's a discussion to be had around this book. I do think it was mildly hilarious times because it was from 2005. So like they talk about LiveJournal and then they have to pause to explain what LiveJournal is. It's like it's a popular blogging website among some young people. I'm like, not anymore, it's not. But no, I did enjoy my time reading it to a point. Like I said though, like I think that there's a middle ground to be found here because Levy does seem like she'd be very much in favor of how our current idea is in our current conservative shift. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was interesting. It was an interesting read. All right, and then yesterday I watched another movie. I watched The Darkest Minds, which came out in 2018. I think that I was the perfect audience for this movie because I have read the books and I really enjoyed the books. However, I read the books years ago, so I don't really remember all the little details from the books. So like I know the overarching plot, but I'm not gonna get kind of bogged down with all the little details that they messed up because I don't remember them. I also think it is hilarious how this is the one dystopian trilogy that did not get a full movie series. It just got this first one. When they end the first book like that, and the movie is true to the end of the first book, like it ends the same way with that whole erasing thing, and I think that's hilarious. That's so funny. But no, The Darkest Minds is a first book in a dystopian trilogy, and this movie is a dystopian movie following this world where all the kids who got sick with a sickness, and most of them died, but those that didn't got powers. They got superpowers. So you got greens who are really just smart, enhanced intelligence, blues who are telekinetic, yellows who deal with electricity, reds who do fire, and oranges who are telepathic, are mind controlling. And I did have fun with it, I forgot that Prince Nikolai was Clancy Gray, which is not how I pictured Clancy when I was reading the book. Clancy was my favorite. I loved Clancy. I thought he was fun. He was not Prince Nikolai in my head though. He's always had like darker hair, I don't know. But I gave it 4 stars. I think I liked it. Just like I said, like I was kind of the perfect one for this movie. So we're talking about what we're keeping. This is not mine. This is the school's. So I'm gonna put that in my backpack. Okay. I'm getting rid of this. I'm getting rid of this. I'm keeping this. I'm getting rid of this. And I think I'll get rid of this too. That one was kind of like, I'm not sure about it. Obviously I'm keeping the movies. And now what I received. First up, I did order a DVD. Because I kept seeing clips of it on TikTok and I was like, I just want to watch that movie so bad. And I know it's on YouTube in its entirety. You can just watch it on YouTube, but I'm not that kind of person. So I did pick up a DVD of Hurricane Bianca. Sue me. All right. Then I did, I also published 2 books recently. So I did pick those up. So I have book 7 in the Otts Boys series, and that is No Remorse. This is the Quinn book. Takes place in 2001. Yes, 9/11 happens. That's not his main concern though, because he's 14. It's a fun time. I have a fun time with it. And then I did also publish another short story collection that is called Skip. It also has poems in here for the first time ever. So there's that. I picked up And by God's Hand You Shall Die by David Sodergren. I really enjoyed Night Shoot. I thought it was a really fun time, and I'm interested to read more of his work. I did get a couple more on my Kindle, but this one I did pick up physically. So hopefully he wasn't just a one-off. Hopefully everything he writes is great. Speaking of authors that I read one thing from and really liked, and so I want to pick up more of their work, I read Snow Boys by Simon Doyle. Really enjoyed it, so I picked up Runaway Train. This is I got a lot of queer books. I always do. Everything except for 1 and 2 New Yorkers Left is somewhere in there, but I believe we follow this couple, and I believe there's I believe they show up at the end of Snow Boys. I think that's no, it's not at the end of Snow Boys. There's like in the Rainbow Crate edition of Snow Boys, there's like a special extra short story, and they show up in that. But I don't really know what this is about, but I do know that I enjoy Simon Doyle. All right. Then I also picked up The Smile Has Left Your Eyes by Danielle and Dawson, which is, I believe, baseball, but also, like, I believe one of them is gay, and so he tells his older brother, and his older brother does not react positively. So there was that. I also picked up Icing on the Icing on the Cake by Christopher J. Bryce, which I believe is hockey and also library assistant. That's what that is. It looked fun. I don't know. I continued a manga series. I picked up volume 4 of My Love Mix-Up. I have read volumes 1 through 3. It's been a while, but I do still want to continue the series because I really enjoyed volumes 1 through 3, so I did pick up volume 4 as well. I did pick up Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I have not yet read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes because Hunger Games was very much a high school thing for me because they were coming out when I was in middle and high school. Like the books when I was in middle school, the movies when I was in high school. So like I was the perfect age for that. So I never picked up Songbirds and Snakes. I do have it in my next TBR though, for my next TBR takedown thing. So I did pick this up. Then I got my very last Rainbow Crate box. So I've got Demon King's Gardener volumes 1 through 3 by Rory Thornton. Beautiful, beautiful piece of work. As well as The First and Last Demon by Hiyodori, which is like, you can see that. Oh, that's gorgeous. I love it. And then yesterday I did get 2 New Yorkers. So I got April 14th, 2025 and April 7th, 2025. So there's that. One day I will actually kill the book wall, you know? It wasn't this week. It was not this week, but that is that. I will talk to you later, and goodbye.